Yeah, right, Warble, Mary says sarcastically, unconvinced. Who's going to take someone with such a crazy name seriously? Crazy name? Warble repeats, incredulous. Crazy name? What you call crazy, I call evocative. Maybe if I reveal to you the meaning of the name, you will understand its import and appreciate its depth of meaning and significance. Lay it on me, Warble, Mary responds, her head in her hands. She knows she's going to hear it all anyway, so she may as well just get it over with. Mary, the... Warble catches himself as he almost vocalizes the name in public, within earshot of anyone who happens to be well hidden and eavesdropping, or possibly listening in on some kind of surveillance apparatus. The you-know-who is called such because he will even help people wearing color combinations he doesn't care for, such as orange and pink. And he's like a chameleon in that he can adapt to any circumstance in order to come to the aid of damsels in distress and other likely rescue candidates. That's nice, dear, Mary replies. Warble stands up and, in his best Yul Brynner/James Earl Jones voice, says, Mary, watch that package. I'll be back shortly. I'll guard it with my life, Mary replies sarcastically. Warble, not detecting the sarcasm, swells up with gratitude and pride. He strides to the door, opens it dramatically, and exits with a flourish, or so he thinks. Mary shakes her head, calls for the waitress, and orders some more biscuits. Chapter 50. Warble walks to the phone booth outside the Angels Camp Police Department, calls the local television news station, and tells them there is a robbery in progress outside the Angels Hotel. He then crosses the street, jaywalking, as is his wont, and enters the employment office. He surveys the faces of the men and women in line there. Some seem relaxed enough, even happy-go-lucky. Some look embarrassed, others angry, yet others depressed. Warble selects the man who appears to his trained eye to be the most desperate and approaches him. Tough times, eh, mister? Warble says, skipping the normal small talk about the weather and such. The man reluctantly looks at him and grunts something in response. Warble moves a little closer to him. Too close, really, for the man's comfort. The man stands his ground but tilts his head backward a little. Say, fella, Warble says, putting his hands in his pocket and turning to look out the window. How would you like to earn a few bucks? What are you, some kind of wise guy? The man responds, wary of Warble's intentions. How do you mean that? Warble asks, curious if the man has already somehow discerned Warble's great sagacity, or if he just has doubts about his sincerity. What do you mean, how do I mean that? If you're up to some kind of funny business? Warble interrupts him. Do you think this is funny? He asks, drawing a $100 bill from his pocket and surreptitiously showing it to the man. The stranger looks at the bill with a certain hunger in his eyes, yet he remains cautious. All right, what's your game? You got some sheetrock you need stocked? Some blast holes you need dug? What? Warble waves his hand dismissively. No, nothing like that. Nothing that involved, complicated, time-consuming, and downright sweat-inducing. What I've got in mind will only take a minute. Before the man can ask any more questions or raise any objections, Warble continues. Don't look now, but there's a lady over there at the Angels Hotel, having breakfast, stuffing her face full of baking powder biscuits and throwing gallons of fresh squeezed orange juice down her neck. She's a British spy. She's here to infiltrate the area and force us all to switch from coffee to tea. At this news, the man's eyes bulge and his nostrils flare. He is outraged. It is obvious that he is now more than willing to hear Warble's proposal. Warble considers asking the man if he will do the job for $50 instead of the original offer of $100. But remembering how soon he will be rolling in dough and wanting to build up a reputation in the community as a big spender, rejects the thought. All you need to do to earn this $100 bill is to mug her when she comes out of the restaurant, Warble tells the unemployed man. You'll be doing your country a favor. You'll stop the infidel before it's too late. You might even end up on 60 Minutes. I'm your man, the stranger says, tugging gently on Warble's sleeve, leading him out of the employment office and onto Main Street. What do you want me to do exactly? Just yank her hair a little bit and take her money, Warble says. That'll be enough to put an end to her mission. Okay, buddy, you've got it. I wouldn't even take the money normally, but my wife and kids are all down with the flu. The cotton won't grow and my bills get bigger each day. I'm busted, mister. I'm ashamed to say it, but I'm busted. So although I know it's my patriotic duty to mug that dreadful limey spy lady, I've got to take the money. Here, fork it over, he says, thrusting out his hand. Not so fast, Mr. Down on his luck, Warble says, eyeing the stranger suspiciously. The man has a weak jaw and shifty eyes. Besides, he looks kind of desperate. Warble doesn't know whether to trust him or not. Warble holds up the $100 bill and rips it in half. He gives the stranger one half and shoves the other half back into his pocket. In this case, the rules of mathematics are turned topsy-turvy, Warble says, explaining his strange actions. Half of 100 is not 50, it's 0. You do your duty and I'll give you the other half. And I'll even let you borrow a strip of duct tape to reunite the legal tender with itself, just to show what a nice guy I am. The man hesitates a moment, shrugs his shoulders, puts the half bill in his pocket, and crosses the street. Unlike Warble, though, he walks up to the crosswalk, next to the post office, before he crosses. No jaywalker he. Warble, oblivious to the good example set right before his eyes, jaywalks across the street again. He re-enters the hotel, rushes up to Mary, snatches the package, which she has left unattended on the seat while she looks at the paintings hanging on the wall around the hotel lobby, and tells her to wait for him and that he'll be down in just a minute. Warble bounds up the stairs, taking them, not 2, but 3 at a time, and after fumbling for a few seconds with the key and lock, enters their room. Quick as a flash, Warble transforms himself into the colorblind chameleon by changing into his new outfit, skin-tight teal running pants, a fuchsia t-shirt emblazoned with the likeness of a chameleon who slightly resembles Mark McGuire, high-top sneakers bedecked with red flashing lights, a chartreuse hat that resembles a mohawk, a long, curly, iridescent papier-mâché tail, and cheap sunglasses. Warble opens the hotel room door and peeks outside. No one there. Good. He rushes halfway down the stairs, staying just out of Mary's line of vision, and yells out excitedly, "Mary! There's a sale on at the studio annex. They're selling pantyhose for $1/4 the pair." That does the trick. Warble doesn't have to wait long. Mary yells out, "Thanks, Warble," and rushes toward the door. Warble goes in the opposite direction, taking the stairs to the roof. As always, Warble has impeccable timing. Just as he opens the attic window and steps out onto the roof, the television van is arriving. Simultaneously, the hired mugger is approaching Mary. As Warble reaches the edge of the roof, Mary screams. The cameraman is a credit to his profession and is already filming the scene as it unfolds. Warble sits down on the roof, scoots over until he's just above the stranger, and pushes himself off the roof with his hands. While dropping the short distance through the air, Warble has only enough time to hope that if he misses the stranger, he will land on Mary so that she breaks his fall. Alerted by Mary's scream, 2 officers emerge from the police station, each with a donut in his hand. One is chocolate, and the other one is jelly-filled. The donuts, not the police officers. There are very few chocolate police officers in Angel's Camp. The peace officers are too late to intervene, though. Fortunately for both of the McGorkles, Warble has landed directly on the unemployed stranger. Warble subdues the man by wrapping him in a full Nelson. Warble then turns to face the camera and smiles. "Never fear, the colorblind chameleon is here," he bellows. The hero then returns his attention to the dangerous mugger. As Warble wrestles the stranger to the ground, he surreptitiously reaches into the man's pocket and extracts the half of the $100 bill he had given him earlier. The man, screaming in agony, because Warble is grinding his kneecap into the sidewalk, doesn't notice that he has been pickpocketed. Mary's scream attracts not only the police, but also many shopkeepers, shoppers, shoplifters, and other tourists. When the crowd sees what has apparently happened, they break into spontaneous applause for the mysterious masked man. After handing the would-be mugger and spy-catcher over to the police, Warble bows to the crowd. When he straightens up and turns back around to face the news crew, prepared to be interviewed, Mary looks at him and, recognizing her husband, gasps. Warble sees that she is about to spoil the moment and quickly covers her mouth with his hand. "Oh, damsel in distress, it's obvious you are distraught. You must rest and recuperate. Don't try to speak. There's no need to thank me." Warble sweeps Mary off her feet, literally, and carries her back into the Angel's Hotel, laying her on her back on the long, cool wooden counter. Mary is, perhaps not surprisingly, furious. "Warble, it's you! You were behind this! I could have been—" "Shh, Mary, not now," Warble says. He leans close and whispers in her ear. "I'll explain it all later. Believe me, it's for your own good, if you know what I mean," he adds, raising his eyebrows up and down and rapidly rubbing his thumb and middle finger together. Mary sighs, exasperated, lays her head down on the countertop, and stares up at the ceiling. "What next?" she mutters. Chapter 51. After basking in the accolades that accrue to him on the basis of his courageous and daring rescue action, Warble realizes he needs one more thing to accomplish his purpose of fame and fortune as the colorblind chameleon. "Mary, I don't know why you didn't think of this before, but I need a sidekick. Every self-respecting superhero has a sidekick. Batman has Robin, Waylon had Willie, Bert had Ernie, Michael had Scotty. The colorblind chameleon has—" "Who?" "Nobody, that's who." Warble sits down and mopes. Mary glares at him, completely unsympathetic to his plight. For several seconds they remain in this attitude, Warble so forlorn as to prompt tears of compassion, or not. Mary seething so hotly that you could cook an omelet on the top of her head, albeit a rather hair-infested one it would doubtless turn out to be. Then Warble springs up so suddenly that he startles Mary, and so high that he almost bumps his head on the ceiling. "I've got it! I'll advertise for one in the paper. People will be scrambling all over each other for this job." As good as his word, Warble is up and out the door, headed for the newspaper office before Mary can even respond. Warble places the following ad to run in the next issue of the Calaveras Prospect. "Wanted bullfrog sidekick for the color-blind chameleon seeking energetic, honest, loyal, halitosis-free sidekick. Must be good with the public, agile, adept at paperwork, possess good handwriting and/or typing skills, be bondable, and look good in green leotards. Decent pay, irregular hours, on-call 24/7. Dallas Cowboys fans need not apply. Call 209-286-2288 for a confidential interview. Ask for the colorblind chameleon." Warble spends the next day interviewing a seemingly endless stream of applicants that range in age from 8 to 80. He wonders why people can't or don't or won't read. He plainly stated in the ad that people must meet certain specific criteria, and yet nobody he interviews meets them all. Some are energetic but can't type. Others are honest, but admit that they are not loyal. Some claim to be good with the public, but are not halitosis-free. By lunchtime, nobody has even made it to the uniform trying-on portion of the interview, and Warble is beginning to despair of finding a suitable sidekick. "It's hard to find good help nowadays, Mary," he laments. None too soon, there is a rap on the door. "Come in," Warble responds, weariness in his voice, holding out scant hope that this next applicant will be any better qualified than the others were. The 20-something man walks straight up to Warble, cocky as all get out, and offers his hand. "Hi, I'm Billy Bufferchunks," the man introduces himself. "You must be the color-blind chameleon." "Good deduction, Billy," Warble answers sarcastically, rolling his eyes. He gestures to the chair opposite his desk. "Have a seat." Warble grills Billy for several minutes. Billy possesses all the qualities and qualifications Warble is looking for, or at least claims to. Warble finally walks around the desk and checks the halitosis situation. Warble muses. "A little catsuppy, but I guess that's okay." Billy has an inordinate fondness for a particular brand of catsup, which is available in 57 varieties. "Look, Billy, I don't want to pull any punches about this job. There might be punches thrown from time to time. You know, all that K-Pow and K-Bluey stuff. For the most part, though, your job will consist of paperwork. The superhero business has really changed from the days of the Gray Ghost and the Lone Ranger. Anything we do, we have to fill out paperwork nowadays. You make the world safe for whatever it is you're making it safe for. And then the authorities are all over you like ticks on a mule deer. Why did you beat up that crook? Did you try psychotherapy first? Did you offer him the chance to apologize and enter a center for criminaholics? Did you allow him his choice of weapons? Did you give him a 3-step head start before you attacked? Etc., etc. Infinitum ad nauseum. All of it has to be filled out in triplicate and notarized by the Justice League of the NAFTA Alliance. So, Warble sighs, I'll need you to deal with the paperwork in the aftermath of our crime-fighting activities, while I pursue photo ops. That's all fine with Billy. Anything's all right with Billy. He seems very eager to be the bullfrog. Warble gravely rises and crosses to the wardrobe, brings back the bullfrog costume and hands it to Billy, indicating to him with a nod of the head where he can change. As Billy closes the bathroom door behind himself, Warble and Mary exchange glances. Warble is hopeful Billy is the one. He likes him well enough, and besides, he's getting tired of interviewing people. When Billy emerges, dressed in the lime green leotards and t-shirt, swamp green baggy suit over his torso, and burnt sienna cape, Warble is disappointed. I'm sorry, Billy. You seem all right otherwise, but you just don't look so hot in that outfit with those chicken legs of yours, and that mastiff on steroids torso. And that beer belly isn't all that becoming in a superhero either. Billy isn't about to take takeoff for an answer, though. Hey, you visually impaired reptile, what do you expect in a bullfrog anyway? Dwayne the Boulder Johnson or something? Come on, he wheedles, changing his tone. Give a guy a break, will you? After all, as the great philosopher Meatloaf said, 8 out of 9 ain't bad. Warble looks up, pleasantly surprised. Hey, Billy, I like your style. I'll overlook the overhang there. Consider yourself the bullfrog. You mean it, mister? Gee whiz. You won't be sorry. I won't let you down. Beat it, kid. Get out of here before I change my mind. Billy grabs his street clothes and heads for the door. Start tomorrow at 8, Billy, Warble says as Billy opens the door to leave. And don't be late. Chapter 52. By means of skillful PR work on Warble's part, along with some of his signature dirty tricks, not to mention impeccable handling of the paperwork by the bullfrog, the colorblind chameleon is soon a household name and is revered, admired, esteemed, and beloved by all, save the unsavory, who fear and loathe him. Always eager to affiliate themselves with anyone who will help them sell their products, Warble is soon approached by various large corporations who want him to serve as their spokesman and mascot. By means of Billy's impressive phone skills and Warble's negotiation-savvy ways, the colorblind chameleon lands several multi-million-dollar endorsement contracts. The chameleon's first endorsement is a television commercial for M&M's chocolate candies. Warble, dressed up in his crime-fighting costume, declares for all the world to hear that M&M's are the source of his strength. Before he takes on any anti-crime activity, he always makes sure to fortify himself with a generous handful, or more, of the gaily colored tasty morsels. After flexing his muscles at the end of his testimonial, they are, for the most part, falsies, wadded-up toilet paper that Warble has stuffed into the upper arms of his shirt. Warble thrusts a fistful of chocolate toward the camera and proclaims, M&M's. Don't leave home without 'em. And look at this. Even after holding them in my hot little hands for all this time, and under these oppressive lights, they haven't turned sloppy on me. No muss, no fuss. Then he pops the entire handful in his mouth and, with his mouth full and hand extended toward the camera, proving there are no chocolate streaks there, mumbles, they melt in your mug, not in your mitt. The colorblind chameleon's popularity continues to increase. He even gets his own television show. Saturday mornings find children watching action cartoons depicting the chameleon's dramatic exploits. Interviewed by Oprah Winfrey, rumors begin to circulate that the colorblind chameleon is being considered for Time magazine's Man of the Year, and also for the Nobel and Pulitzer Peace Prizes for his efforts at stemming the rising tide of crime. At the height of his popularity, the colorblind chameleon signs a multi-year, multi-million-dollar endorsement contract with Sprout-Sager beer. In the commercial he films for their product, Warble proclaims Sprout-Sager as the official beer of me, the colorblind chameleon, and of my peon partner, the bullfrog. Everyone but Billy considers the commercial a smashing success. Warble doesn't realize, though, that some paparazzis continue filming him after Sprout-Sager's crew have packed up their equipment and left. Warble turns to the bullfrog and, making a face, pours the rest of the light golden liquid on the street and says, I wouldn't drink this swill for all the teacups in China. It tastes like it's made of sugar, tide, and lizard spit. And I'm no cannibal. Warble, still spitting, trying to get the taste of Sprout Sager out of his mouth and more specifically off his taste buds, crosses the street and enters a tavern. After waiting impatiently for a few milliseconds, Warble bellows out to the bartender, "Hey man, come down here!" The barkeep looks up lazily with a, "Who do you think you are?" look on his face. He then recognizes his new customer and scurries on down to the end of the bar. "What you want?" he inquires, mincing no words on small talk. Warble nods with his head toward Mary and Billy, who have followed him into the drinking establishment. "One bourbon for the lady," he begins. "One scotch for the bullfrog here, and one beer for me." Warble is still impervious to the paparazzis, who are standing behind him, recording his every word and gesture. Mary tries to get his attention by pulling on his tail. No response. And then by flicking his mohawk-shaped hat. This only elicits a, "Stop that, bullfrog, can't you see I'm busy here?" from Warble, and before the bullfrog can object that it wasn't him doing the flicking, Warble reaches around without looking and clamps his hand over the bullfrog's mouth. "What kind of beer do you want?" the bartender asks. "Sprout Sager?" He knows about the Chameleon's deal with that brand and its supposed position as official beer of the colorblind chameleon. "Dallas, no," Warble replies vehemently. "Why would I drink that trash? Give me a Hop Otten IPA." The bartender raises an eyebrow and dutifully walks off to get the drinks. The paparazzis are only too happy to play the tape for the people from Sprout Sager. Needless to say, it isn't long before the parent company, Arbor Tree, hears about it. Within 2 days, Warble receives a certified letter in the mail, canceling his endorsement contract and demanding a refund of a portion of the monies already paid him due to a breach of said contract. Reading the fine print, which requires a magnifying glass, as it is in 6-point font, like this. I bet you can't read this. Warble sees that it indeed says that any reference to their product as trash constitutes breach, nulling and voiding the contract, and requiring a return of 94.2% of any monies already paid. Now, why would they add a clause like that? Warble wonders aloud. He is livid. After pacing around the room for a few seconds, Warble grabs a calculator and quickly enters some figures. He can't believe what he sees. What? This is an outrage. This is a travesty. And a bummer, too. Can you believe this, Mary? I lowered myself not only to being seen with a can of Sprout Sager in my hand, but even drinking the stuff. Yech. And all for a measly, mere miserly, minuscule $580,000. Chicken feed. Chicken feed, Mary replies. You told me we couldn't afford for me to get a new wardrobe. I could attire myself quite nicely with just a fraction of your leftovers. Now, if you'll just give me a few thousand, or even a few hundred. I wish I could, Mary, I really do, but I can't. Not now, anyway. In the words of the late great philosophers Johnny Cash and Clarence Gatemouth Brown, I'm busted. Mary gasps in indignation, stomps one high-heeled boot on the floor, puts her hands on her hips, and is about to give Warble a piece of her mind when the phone rings. Warble gratefully rushes to answer it. It's a follow-up call from one of Arbor Tree's lawyers, informing him verbally of what the certified letter has already made all too painfully clear. Warble is a little distracted as he listens, despondent as he is over the loss of revenue, and worrying about how he is going to soothe the fuming beast normally known to him as his sweet and charming wife. The phone connection is not the best, and there is some feedback, hissing and crackling on the line. Warble hears the caller's name, Luigi Ouijanoyes, the word contract, and detects a distinctly threatening tone, all the more intimidating as the voice is calm. Steely calm. It comes across as cold and calculating to Warble. When Warble hangs up, he is white as a white sheet that is, one that has just been washed. Mary notices Warble's troubled countenance, and her feminine instincts take over. She approaches Warble to try to comfort him and allay his fears. But the only cure for Warble's morbid fear is a radical and hasty change of venue. An hour later, the McGorkles are on the road again, this time heading north for the small coastal city of Eureka, where Warble plans to hole up in a giant log. Chapter 53. In Mendocino, Warble stops an 8-year-old boy who is going to the store for his mother and sells him his crime-fighting costume. which could now, Warble reasons, get him killed by the beer mafia for all the money the boy has on him. Warble also makes the boy sign an IOU for another $500, which the lad, according to the document, must pay as soon as he is able to do so. By twilight, the McGorkles are entering Eureka, where Warble plans on getting a motel for the night before going on the great log hunt the next day. Doing his best to deflect Mary's objections, such as, "Where will I put the washing machine?" Warble opines that living in a log is a Dallas of a lot better than involuntarily searching for the submariner or the site of the fabled Atlantis while wearing cement-dipped wingtips. Warble notices something, though, that causes him to alter his plans on staying in Eureka. A giant, menacing statue of a lumberjack, accompanied by a hideous creature that bears more than a passing resemblance to a blue version of Barney the dinosaur, towering above him on the right side of the road. Warble is certain that the macabre statue has been placed in this very spot as a warning to him. After all, if such a statue had always been there, it would certainly be world famous, and doubtless one of the 7 wonders of the modern world. And Warble would know all about it. Interpreting the warning, Warble explains it to Mary. "Don't look now, but that Paul Bunyan look-alike is a word to the wise. The underlying message is, keep on driving, Warble, or tonight you will be chopped in half while slumbering in your bed. You will be sawn asunder like a fresh-cut log in a lumber mill." Needless to say, Warble keeps driving. In fact, he is so upset by the grisly warning that he drives through the night while Mary sleeps. At midnight, they reach Ashland, Oregon, far enough away from Eureka and from California to feel relatively safe. Warble pulls into a Motel 94.2, checks in, gallantly carries Mary from the car to the room, and, after brushing and flossing, falls fast asleep. It must be fear that has made Warble so weary, the fear of being tracked down by the beer mafia and fed to the sea creatures, the fear of being divided in two by a sharp instrument, the fear of trying to live on a measly $580,000 for a while, after growing accustomed to a life in the lap of luxury. The point is, Warble is completely exhausted when he goes to bed that night. The upshot of this circumstance is that an amazing thing happens. Mary wakes up before Warble the next morning. In fact, Warble sleeps so long that Mary begins to worry about him. He has never slept this long before. Just as Mary is about to wake Warble up and bends over him to do so, Warble suddenly jolts awake of his own volition. "Egads!" Warble yells out and bolts upright in bed. Mary springs back. "Warble, what is it?" Warble rubs his eyes, opens and closes them several times in rapid succession, and then rubs them again. "Oh, it's only you. I thought you were the maid coming in to ravish me." "Warble, don't you recognize your own wife?" Mary asked, her feelings hurt. "Now I do. But the first thing I saw was this big, giant face right in mine with that, 'Why are you still sleeping? I need to make the bed' look. So I thought you were the maid." That wasn't an, "I need to make the bed' look. It was a look of concern. "Do you know how long you slept? It's almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon." Warble yells out again, this time more in a tone of agony and frustration than morbid fear. "Mary, why didn't you wake me? Now I have to make up for lost time somehow. The longest you should ever let me sleep is 8 hours. Now I'm going to have to drive like a bat out of Dallas to catch up to where we should be by now." "Come on, let's go," he yells, grabbing her by the hand and hurrying out of the hotel room and into the PT Cruiser. Southern and Central Oregon go by in a blur. At the Dalles, they go through the Citizen Page drive-thru. They had gone without breakfast due to Warble's quest to make up the time he had lost in Slumberland. At Kennewick, Washington, they make their last fuel stop before arriving at their next destination. Warble has elected to head for the land of rivers, lakes, mountains, forests, and fog. The narrow strip of real estate that serves as a buffer zone between the cattle ranchers of Montana and the computer nerds of Washington State, the Idaho Panhandle. Chapter 54. Warble decides on settling in Coeur d'Alene because since nobody can spell it or pronounce it, he thinks he will receive neither telemarketing calls nor junk mail there. After all, what telemarketer wants to suffer the embarrassment of being laughed at when saying, "Let me make sure I've got your address right. Blah, 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 Cowardly Lion, Idaho." And what typist wants to have to memorize the spelling aid, call our English Uncle Rathbone, D apostrophe, alone with an E instead of an O, just to send a flyer for collector edition life-size Barney the Dinosaur bobblehead dolls to a stranger? Presumably nobody. So Warble thinks he can hide in the Lake City, as Coeur d'Alene calls itself, and remain undetectable to his pursuers until he unveils his next ingenious plan, which he has already hatched, stemming from a dream he had during his extended slumber the night before. Then he will be completely safe once and for all, due to his unparalleled fame, which will accrue to him as a rightful reward for his world-beating, earth-shattering innovation. Entering Idaho from Washington, the McGorkles stop to eat at the first citizen page they see, next to the Hot Rod Cafe in Post Falls. Mary lobbies for eating at the cafe, but Warble won't hear of it. Citizen Page is predictable and, or so he claims, being predictable is the best thing to which a restaurant can aspire. While eating his cheeseburger and fries, Warble peruses the Penny Pincher, a local advertisement paper. He finds a likely-sounding house for rent on Dragonfly Drive in Coeur d'Alene, a 4-level, 3-bedroom home with a den to boot on 0.314 acres. Warble, why do we want a house with 3 bedrooms? We only need 2, and only then when I'm really mad at you. You're failing to take into consideration, Mary, that we will be having frequent guests, heads of state, celebrities, athletes, American Idol talent scouts. In other words, the rich and famous and powerful. Why would they be staying with us? Mary asks. Why, you ask? Warble repeats. Because we are so generous and hospitable. That is one of our collective traits. I see, Mary replies, although not really agreeing with that assessment. What I meant, though, was, why would they want to spend the night with us? You sell me short, my darling wife Mary, and yourself to boot, although you seldom wear boots. Tell me, Mary, do you trust me? No. Warble takes another tack. Mary, what's the opposite of no? Yes. Good, you have every reason to. Because I, Warble Poundcake McGorkle, am about to found the next big thing. I will be the sole owner, president, CEO, CFO, CIO, and COO, not to mention chief evangelist and personnel manager, a skill I perfected while working for that old wharf rat Morley Moore, of the most important and, more importantly, most profitable business ever to see the light of day, or, in the case of Coeur d'Alene, the fog of day. Mary is so fed up with Warble's schemes, even when they work, they eventually backfire and disintegrate, that she puts forth her best effort to not be curious about what Warble's proposed business is to be. She tries to concentrate on other things, to get it out of her mind. She weighs some conundrums, such as, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it live or is it Memorex? And is it butter or parquet? As intriguing and involved as these mysteries are, she finally gives in. Warble's plan keeps invading her mind. What came first, the chicken or the egg? I wonder what Warble's idea could be. Is it live or is it Memorex? What does Warble have up his sleeve now? Is it butter or parquet? Is it possible that this time his plan will really succeed and remain successful? Mary can't take the suspense any longer. All right, Warble, you win, she says. What is it? What is this business of yours that's so all-fired great, important, and lucrative? I thought you'd never ask, Mary. Bio companies are all the rage nowadays, cracking the DNA, unraveling the human genome, cloning sheep, woolly mammoths, and Elvis. But those companies, Warble says, pointing his index finger at Mary, are run by geeks who just like the challenge of finding all that stuff out. My bio company's going to make practical use of that sort of information. Biotrans will let people be what they want to be. Who they want to be is a more accurate way of describing it. I already have a slogan for the company. Change your life, or someone else's, with Biotrans. Mary stares at Warble for a couple of seconds, slurps up the rest of her milkshake, and asks, and what exactly will Biotrans do that will be so helpful? Warble smiles wryly and slyly and leans across the table. He whispers, personality transplants, Mary. Personality transplants. The possibilities are endless. Mary, to her credit, does not experience a myocardial infarction at hearing this bit of news. She kind of hopes, though, that Warble will be his own first customer, if the transplants really work, that is. Chapter 55. The McGorkles rent the house on Dragonfly Drive, and Warble immediately begins work on his business plan. He will finance it himself, and neither seek nor accept business partners. No partners means nobody to share the profits with, and nobody that must be consulted when decisions are made. It also means that word of the undertaking will not leak until he himself is ready to unveil the particulars of the groundbreaking venture in a news conference. 3 days pass. Mary gets to know the town, where the stores are, that is, the only thing about the town that is really important to her. While Warble works feverishly on his speech for the news conference and the pricing structure for the various services Biotrans will offer. Warble only emerges from the basement den to eat and sleep. He eats his meals as quickly as possible, lost in thought all the while. He wouldn't have even noticed the difference if Reese Witherspoon had been sitting across from him at the table instead of his wife Mary. Warble is a man obsessed, driven, compelled to get his speech perfect, making people want to, feel as if they need to, make use of his service. He also spends hours upon hours determining what is the maximum amount the market will bear for his transplants. How much can he charge? What is the cutoff point just a smidgen below where people would say, "Nah, forget it. I can't afford that much." Warble, being a good businessman, doesn't want to leave any money on the table. On the 4th evening after their arrival in Coeur d'Alene, Warble emerges from his den early, 9:42 p.m. Since he hasn't been going to bed until after 1 a.m. the last few nights, Mary is surprised to see him as he practically runs into the living room. Beaming, she looks at him expectantly. "I've done it, Mary," Warble cries out jubilantly. "I'm a genius. I'm even more of a genius than I already knew I was. Stop the presses, batten down the hatches. It's time for the world to bow before its great benefactor, me." Warble calls all the major news networks, and due to the fact that Warble's enthusiasm is contagious and intriguing, it will make a good story anyway, even if he makes a fool of himself, the news directors think. And because it happens to be an extraordinarily slow news day, all the networks agree to have representatives in the lobby of the Coeur d'Alene Resort at 6 p.m. Pacific Time the following night, which is the optimal time for simultaneous national exposure, since most people on the West Coast will be home from work by then, but it will still be early enough, 9 o'clock, for those in the East to watch Warble's press conference before hitting the sack. Warble enjoys a deep, dream-filled sleep that night. Satisfied with himself, to put it mildly, he drifts off with a sublime smile of contentment on his face. He dreams of the immense piles of money in which he will soon be frolicking about. Croesus will look like a pauper to comparison shoppers. Warble will have to build large vaults and storehouses in which to hoard his stockpile of gold coins. He dreams of eventually having 3 sons, Sam, Buck, and Mike, who will courageously and loyally defend any offensive perpetrated against their father's cache. In Warble's most vivid dream, his 3 sons riddle the Beagle Boys full of holes with their submachine guns and then fry them Cajun style with their flamethrowers, leaving the gold unscorched, of course. Warble awakens in the morning refreshed, revivified, and invigorated. There's nothing like the smell of impending success and inconceivable wealth in the morning, he tells Mary, who groggily mumbles something about letting her rest in peace. Warble, though, is full of energy and springs out of bed. He showers, brews coffee, prepares breakfast, for himself only, forgetting that Mary too sometimes likes to eat, and scarfs it all down in record time. Bursting with nervous energy, scarcely able to contain himself in anticipation of the exciting events to occur that evening, Warble, on a whim, runs down the steps, flings open the front door, and, without even hesitating long enough to close the door behind himself, races down the street to Wolfie's to pick up the morning paper, a Hostess fruit pie, and a box of frosted Pop-Tarts. Warble is out of breath by the time he returns home. He's glad he left the door open, so he doesn't have to expend the energy needed to open it. Warble's sprint on the way to Wolfie's turned to a jog, and then a slow-motion power walk on the way back from that convenience store. Now Warble is wheezing, barely able to drag himself up the stairs. He rips open a package of Pop-Tarts and puts them in the toaster. Sitting down at the dining room table, Warble opens the coeur d'Alene press and tears open the fruit pie. Reading the news with a bemused expression on his face, Warble bursts out laughing all of a sudden. What a bland and easily amused world to print these types of stories, Warble thinks. War, pollution, global warming/climate change, diseases, flooding, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, rampant crime, economic collapse. After tonight, they will have far more interesting and important subjects to write about. Chapter 56. Tonight will be Warble's big night on television. This evening's news conference will make any previous television appearance by the colorblind chameleon pale in comparison, whether it was restoring old ladies' stolen purses to them after beating up the purse snatcher, or someone resembling him, or at least appearing to be a suspicious character, to within an inch of his life, or hawking watered-down beer. Cognizant of the importance of personal appearance, especially first impressions, Warble considers what to wear in front of the camera. Torn between the desire to honor tradition and his innate contrarianism, Warble finally decides to wear a suit and tie, but not in the conventional fashion. At a costume store, he picks up a zoot suit at a cut-rate price. At a Western clothing store, he purchases a bolo tie. Augmenting the fashion nightmare, as Mary deems it, who refuses to be seen on camera with Warble, at least as long as he is dressed in this way, Warble adds a pair of snakeskin boots and a Panama hat, which, by the way, happens to have been made in Bolivia. Completing the effect is the jaunty and rakish angle at which he insists on wearing the headpiece. By the time Warble has assembled his outfit, only a couple of hours remain until the press conference is to begin. He spends the remainder of the time preening in front of the mirror and rehearsing his speech. The hour finally arrives for the great unveiling of Warble's neoteric business. With an eye still firmly fixed on appearances, he hires a limousine to transport him to the resort hotel. Mary opts to remain at home, unsure of what the reaction to Warble's speech will be, for that matter what preposterous claims her husband might make and what sort of limbs he might climb out on. She explains her decision to Warble by saying that she wants to monitor the television coverage to verify its accuracy. Warble arrives at the Coeur d'Alene resort a little more than half an hour early. He doesn't want to make his appearance just yet, lest he have nothing to do but wander around until 6. Warble doesn't want people to think he doesn't have anything better to do, and he doesn't want to be pestered by newsmen wanting him to divulge in advance the content of his news conference, especially because, in his exuberance, he might comply with their request in spite of himself. At 6 minutes and 28 seconds before showtime, as Warble refers to it, he emerges from the limousine and tells the driver to send the bill to Biotrans. To appease the perturbed chauffeur, who was expecting cash, Warble flips him a tip as he walks away. The driver catches the dime deftly, bites it to ensure that it's not counterfeit, and, with a scowl, squeeches away. Resplendent in his finery and cockier than any rooster or cocker spaniel you care to parade forth as a comparison piece, Warble ascends the steps to the podium. A banner with the name of his nascent company and its slogan is suspended from the ceiling. As the minutes tick down until lights, camera, action, Warble gazes out upon the steadily growing crowd, largesse emanating from his eyes and supreme confidence from his posture. As the final seconds tick down, Warble signals along with the camera crew with his fingers. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.14, 2, 1, and then points at the cameraman. The camera whirs, the lights blaze, and the action begins. Chapter 57. Ladies and gentlemen, and all the rest of you, Warble begins, tonight you are witnessing a great event in history. Your life will change based on the new business and scientific process which I will unveil and reveal to you tonight. Life on this planet we call Earth gets better as of this hour. You will proudly recount all the details of what you will hear here tonight to your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. When these your progeny ask you, who is that man depicted so gloriously in that 314-foot-high statue there? You will be able to proudly reply, that is the illustrious Warble P. McGorkle, a great magnanimous and selfless philanthropist who made life as we know it today possible by means of the most ingenious invention of all time. Before I reveal to all of you here Warble gestures toward the curious crowd. And all of you out there in television land, he points to the camera, exactly what it is to which I'm referring. I will first provide you with some background information. Many of you have heard it said that you are what you eat. This is true, not of course in the sense that if you eat a kumquat, you become a kumquat. Not in that the masticating and digesting of a fruit salad turns you into such a tasty dish. No, you are what you eat in the sense that the combination of everything you eat determines who you are as a person. Your personality is formed and altered by the DNA in the animals, vegetables, minerals, and chemicals that you consume. That is all well and good, you may say, and sounds logical enough. But what does that have to do with the price of coffee in Coffeeville, Kansas? Well, friends, the answer is absolutely nothing. But what we've got here is a failure to communicate, that's all. And I'm going to fix that right now by telling you about the amazing opportunity that you will henceforth have. My new company, Biotrans, will make available to you, dear consumer, the chance of a lifetime. Warble pauses, allowing his last statement to sink in anticipation for the next to build. When you were a kid playing basketball, did you ever utter the desire, I wish I was Michael Jordan? When you took piano lessons, did you ever say, if only I could tickle the ivories like Jerry Lee Lewis? And you women out there, tell me you haven't secretly said, if only I could make a souffle like Julia Child. Warble pauses again, surveying the crowd. All eyes in the house are fixed on him. Some of the eyes owners are seemingly mesmerized. Others are apparently dazed and confused. After tantalizing them with his pregnant pause for several seconds, staring at them while standing as still and silent as a statue, Warble presses on with his coup d'etat. Friends, Roman Catholics, and countrymen as well as citymen, lend me your ears. You can be Jerry Lee Lewis. You can be Julia Child. You can be like Mike. In fact, through the simple and painless ingesting of a single pill 3.1, 4 times the size of a children's aspirin tablet, you can be anybody you like, living or dead, from Attila the Hun to Zorba the Greek and everyone in between, from Anne of Green Gables to Frank Zappa, or anyone else you have ever envied. Yes, friends, and so forth, it's true. For a price, the details of which will be explained later, you can, through the miracles of the modern science of biometrics, take on the personality of anyone who has ever lived. It's your choice. You make the call. No fear, no limits, no boundaries. Just say no to no. Now maybe you're wondering, to what other uses can this technology be applied? Well, I'm glad you sort of asked. Here are just a few of the ways Biotrans product and service can be used to benefit mankind. 1. Police SWAT teams will be able to round up street gangs and force-feed them Gandhi and Mother Teresa pills, which will mean the end to crime and drugs in our streets. 2. Prison wardens will be able to keep jailbirds in line and under their thumb by grinding up Mr. Rogers' pills and putting them in the chow of the problem inmates. Prison riots will thereby be made a thing of the past. 3. Parents will be able to have the child they really want, not some ungrateful, spoiled brat, by purchasing Wally Cleaver or Little Orphan Annie pills. 4. Miss America wannabes can guarantee success in their chosen endeavor by purchasing pills of people with the most pleasing personalities, since everyone knows that it's personality that plays the pivotal role in winning that particular contest. Besides these more obvious and dramatic benefits to mankind, even those of you who make use of our service to fulfill a desire to be like someone else will ultimately benefit mankind tremendously. How, you ask? Because when you're able to lead the life you always wanted, you'll be happy. A happy populace means a productive populace. A productive populace improves the economy and thus not only their own lot in life, but also that of everyone else. That's what I call trickle every which way economics. Trickling up, down, and sideways. The upshot of this is that eventually everyone everywhere will be able to afford our service, and the happiness and productivity will just continue to increase exponentially. All the no-good jerks in this country will choose to be nice, well-rounded individuals. All the ne'er-do-wells will trade in that trait for a new set of better ones. It's a win-win situation. As the great philosopher Bruce Springsteen said, Nobody wins unless everybody wins. And in this scenario, thanks to me, remember, we all win. Warble sees he has them. The audience is enthralled, transfixed, mesmerized, or in the case of some of them anyway, just plain confused. Now, without further ado, let me explain the price structure of Biotrans service. The price for the pill we will custom manufacture for you depends on two basic factors. 1. Whether the person you choose is currently living or not. And 2. How much it will cost us to purchase the same type and amount of food they ingested in their life, or up to a certain point in their life. Let me explain that last point. Say you want to be like Peyton Manning when he was playing football, flinging the spheroid all over the stadium. We would have to pay X amount for the food he had eaten up until then. But if you want to be like Peyton today, in his commercial-making, brother-teasing days, it will cost more because he has eaten a lot more between then and now, and we will have to expend X plus N to acquire those foodstuffs. Warble notices that the eyes of many in the audience are beginning to glaze over, and so he shifts gears. That, all you fortunate people, concludes the initial portion of the press conference. How much time remains, Maestro? Warble asks the lady in charge of the camera crew. 5 minutes, Mr. McGorkle, she answers. Warble snaps. His fingers, that is. Look, lady, get it right, will you? It's McGorkle. And he spells it out for her. At that, all of the reporters in the audience busily scribble into their notepads, grateful for the verification of the spelling of Warble's last name. All right, Warble continues. We have 5 minutes left for questions from the audience. One of the reporters from Coeur d'Alene High School's paper, Viking Vibes, raises her hand. Yes, miss? Warble asks. When a customer or client or subject or patient or whatever you call it. Beneficiary, Warble interjects, nodding. Okay. When a beneficiary makes use of your service, do they take on the appearance of the person they admire? Good question, Warble commends her. Bad answer, she shoots back. Shut up, you didn't let me finish, Warble says testily. He clears his throat and straightens his tie. No, that would be not only very painful, remember that scene from Inner Space where Jack turned into the cowboy? But also impossible. Remember, that was a movie, not real life. The beneficiary acquires the personality of the person only, not their physical appearance. In other words, their psyche changes, not their physique. The girl tries to ask another question, but Warble is still miffed at her and shouts her down. You had your turn, you microphone hog. Give someone else a chance. A reporter from the Coeur d'Alene Press raises his hand, and Warble calls on him. Mr. Flowers? Mr. McGorkle, how are you able to ascertain what foods dead people ate, especially those people who lived thousands of years ago, such as Attila the Hun? In order to avoid a reprise of the high school girl's rude retort, Warble doesn't commend the quality of the query. Rather, he just answers the question without preamble. We can ascertain the data from a single strand of the person's hair. All we've got to do is pay some wino to dig the old geezer or geezerette up, snip off a lock of hair, examine it with our super high-powered microscope, and voila! The beans are, so to speak, spilled. The reporter follows up with a second question. Earlier you said that part of the cost is determined by whether the subject was living or not. Why is that? It's a legal issue, Mr. Flowers, Warble replies. I probably shouldn't delve too much into the particulars. I'll leave that to our bean counters and sharks, accountants and lawyers, I mean. But I can tell you this. We don't have to pay license fees to the dead people. The living subjects will probably, in most cases, charge us to reproduce their personality. The greedier they are, the more it will cost us, and we will be compelled to pass that cost on to our customers. Of course, if the greedy person also happens to be very popular, economies of scale will come into play. What this means is that if enough people pay to take on Arnold Schwarzenegger's personality, for example, he could be cheaper than, for instance, Tom Arnold. This is the case because even though Tom signs up with us for, let's say, just to name an odd figure, $31.41, and Schwarzenegger charges us, for instance, 100 times as much. Mr. Arnold may only have 1 or 2 admirers. This means that after our charge for shipping and handling, a mere 31.4% of the license charge, prorated, plus 62.8% of the foodstuff costs. The Arnold Schwarzenegger pill may be very attractive, price-wise in comparison with the relatively unpopular gent. And a bright-eyed youngster in the audience shoots up his hand, and so excited is he about asking his question, grunts each time he thrusts his hand into the air. "That young whippersnapper in the Spider-Man costume," Warble says, pointing to him. "Who are you?" the boy asks. The question confuses Warble. He hasn't exactly made his name a secret during his presentation. The boy sees that Warble doesn't know what he means and rephrases the question. "Whose pill did you take? Who are you now?" Warble now comprehends but is a little taken aback. Why would he want to be someone else? "I, young man, am myself. Warble P. McGorkle. As I am practically perfect in every way, for example, completely lacking in avarice, a paragon of politeness, the essence of class, the very picture of good looks, as well as humility personified, there's no reason I would ever need to or want to adopt the personality of a lesser mortal. In fact, Warble McGorkle pills will be available at a deep discount due to my strong desire to see a better society. If you purchase tonight, you can receive a pill that will infuse you with my personality for a cheap at 3.14 times the price of $31,415.93. The camera crew informs Warble there is only 1 minute remaining before they must pack up. "There's only time for one more question," Warble informs the assembled crowd. An elderly lady in the audience, who has been watching the entire proceedings with a blank expression, Warble thought she was probably simple, now raises a withered hand. "Yes, Granny?" Warble asks. "I'll granny you, you menace to society. What's to prevent someone from using these pills for evil ends? For example, kidnappers could purchase Lizzie Borden or Dennis Rodman pills from you and then threaten to feed them to the kids they nap. What's a parent to do but cough up the cash in a situation like that?" "Let me put you at ease, ma'am," Warble says with a phony smile on his face, struggling to remain polite. "We will never sell to criminals. We will require from each potential customer a completely filled-out application form on which they must affirm that they are not former convicts, future convicts, IRS agents, or game show hosts." A look of relief floods the old lady's face. "Well, why didn't you say so from the get-go? Bless you for that, Sonny." Warble beams at the triumphant culmination to the press conference. Looking out of the corner of his eye to make sure the camera is on him, he sets his jaw, plasters his best Gary Cooper look on his face, and turns his best side camera-wards. The lights click off, and the camera stops whirring. So ends the press conference. Warble resumes his natural demeanor and descends from the platform and into the arms of an adoring public. How Warble gets home that night is really of no consequence whatsoever in the unfurling of this tale, so the rather mundane details of that particular circumstance are omitted. Chapter 58. Warble's pill-making lab, which he sets up in his garage, is comprised of 3 machines: a reverse osmosis tank, a mini particle accelerator, and a fully functional scale model replica of a Gold Rush-era stamp mill. The foodstuffs are fed into the reverse osmosis tank, where the necessary chemical reactions take place. Then, the particle accelerator accelerates the particles, for no reason in particular other than that it is way cool and will impress people. And finally, the reverse osmosisized accelerated foodstuffs are placed under the stamp mill, where they are squashed much, much, much flatter than a pancake. The compressed foodstuffs are then pried out of an impression the size and shape of a pill at the bottom of the platform. Biotrans does well. In fact, Biotrans does very well. Knowing a gold mine when he sees one, Warble is unwilling to sell any interest whatsoever in his company. Nevertheless, corporations as diverse as Microsoft, Ben & Jerry's, and FMC pay millions of dollars just for the right to advertise their products as the official operating system of Biotrans, the official ice cream of Biotrans, and the official armored personnel carrier tank of Biotrans. Things go so well, in fact, that Mary begins to believe that maybe this time Warble has truly found his niche. No more bilking of snack food companies, no more polka punk bands, no more firing people for fun, no more colorblind chameleon shenanigans. Hoping against hope, Mary makes a trip to the Super One grocery store to purchase some begonia seedlings. She plants them in a perimeter around the house and looks forward to cultivating the greatest specimens in the entire Idaho panhandle. They may not turn out to be as big and beautiful as her begonias back home in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, but they will nevertheless serve as a source of satisfaction and contentment to her. Mary gleans just as much gratification from her horticultural hobby as Warble does from his business venture. Once again, Warble appears in a cover story in the Wall Street Journal, as well as countless other journals of various stripes and circulation figures. He is again mentioned favorably when the talk turns to peace prizes and potential Time Magazine Man of the Year. Things can change quickly, though. Due to an accident in the lab, Warble falls from grace quicker than you can say, "Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O." The blame for Warble's downfall can be laid squarely at the doorstep of the produce for which the state is famous, spuds. If there weren't so many spuds in Idaho, they wouldn't be so inexpensive there. If they weren't so inexpensive, Warble wouldn't have purchased so many sacks of them as a snack food to give him energy while he was working in his garage/laboratory. If he hadn't purchased so many sacks of them, one of the sacks wouldn't have been sticking out from under his workbench. If not for that, he wouldn't have tripped over it when he was carrying a container full of assorted pills. And if not for the spill, the pills would not have scattered all across the laboratory garage floor. "Dang it to Dallas," Warble says as he hits the floor and rolls over in a manner reminiscent of Rin Tin Tin at his most obsequious. Warble is sore in more ways than one. His shoulder is sore, and he is sore about having to sweep up all the pills. Unwilling to put the pills through the rigorous and time-consuming chemical analysis to definitively determine which one is which, and also unwilling to eat the cost of producing the pills, Warble makes one of those tough executive decisions for which CEOs are paid the big bucks. He consults himself for a few seconds, saving himself the time, trouble, and expense of hiring an outside consultant to consult, and then solves the dilemma. Warble decides to make his best guess as to which pills are which based on hue and aroma. After all, who knows this whole business better than him? And even if he makes a mistake or two, his customers probably won't even notice. So Warble labels the pills based on an educated guess and his record of which pills were in the batch that he spilled, and sends them out to the various customers. Some of the pills, as is probably not surprising, are mislabeled, and therefore sent to the wrong people. Warble has a bad feeling gnawing away at his stomach for a few days, but tries to ignore it. After all, what's done is done. What can he do about it now? Chapter 59. Warble should have known. They call it Blue Monday, Stormy Monday, Manic Monday. It was on a Monday that all Dallas broke loose. If Biotrans had been a publicly held company, Wall Street may have been moved to term it the Biotrans Monday Meltdown. The first call comes from a couple who had given their child what they thought was a Haley Joel Osment pill, but after a dramatic reduction in the bat population in their area and a telltale assemblage of mammal bones in the boy's closet, it became apparent that what they had given their son was in actuality an Ozzy Osbourne pill. These beside-themselves parents inform Warble that he will be contacted soon by their attorney, Eddie Cochran, who earned enough money to attend law school after the phenomenal success of his hit single, Summertime Blues. As if that weren't bad enough, a kidnapper who had identified himself as a mild-mannered boxing promoter in the application he had filled out for Biotrans services, which data Warble really gathered, so that he could sell it to other companies, rather than out of any real concern for the public's health and welfare, writes a note comprised of cut-out letters from the online newsletter Kidnapper's Gazette, complaining that the Gandhi pill he gave his victim, after the parents refused to pay the ransom, was apparently a Mike Tyson pill, as the little tyke had bitten both of his ears off. The pastor-togetherer of the note threatens to perpetrate the same bodily harm, or even worse, on Warble. The straw that breaks the camel's back, though, is the communique from the Stockton, California SWAT team, who had unknowingly administered Osama bin Laden pills to one street gang and George W. Bush pills to a rival gang. They thought they had ordered were a combination of Mr. Rogers and Mother Teresa pills. Needless to say, perhaps, the rivalry between the two gangs intensified rather than the hope for detente occurring, Whereas previously their differences were an on-again, off-again, hot and cold affair, the street battles thereafter took on the vehemence of the Hatfields and McCoys feud. The outraged police team also threatens legal action against Biotrans, mentioning that their counsel is the much-feared barrister F. Lee Beetle Bailey. Threats of lawsuits and an involuntary double ear removal, probably without local anesthesia to add insult to injury, are more than enough to light a fire under Warble's tail feathers. He quickly withdraws as much cash as he can from the bank and transfers the rest to a Swiss account. Warble then informs Mary of the necessity of pulling up stakes and instructs her to drench her begonias with Roundup. Mary, despondent, dejected, and depressed, does pour fluid over her beautiful beloved begonias, but it's not Roundup, it's water. She hopes that whoever moves into their soon-to-be abandoned home on Dragonfly Drive will appreciate them and take care of them. That night, after deliberately mixing up the current orders and mailing them out just for grins, now that he's got nothing left to lose, Warble smashes all his laboratory equipment so as to make it unusable by anyone else. Who knows what harm could be inflicted on an unsuspecting public if these instruments of massively dangerous change were to fall into the wrong hands, he explains to Mary, who wonders about what seems to her to be wanton vandalism. In reality, Warble just can't bear the thought of someone else plowing in his field. If he can't reap the profits, no one will. Just as the police arrive, who have been summoned by Warble's next-door neighbor, complaining of the noise caused by Warble's frantic machine dismantling frenzy, Warble and Mary are turning east onto Highway 90, heading back home to Oconomowoc. If Mary had known when they were leaving Idaho that they would be returning home to Wisconsin, she wouldn't have been so despondent. In fact, she would have been downright giddy. She had assumed, though, that when Warble said that they had to leave, that they would be going to Asheville, North Carolina, or Austin, Texas, or some other place she knew nothing about, possibly even to Mukluk, Alaska. Warble figures they have been gone from home long enough so that nobody will think to look for them there. All the police find at the house on Dragonfly Drive is a beautiful bed of begonias surrounding the house and an indescribably chaotic scene of mayhem in the garage. Metal, plastic, glass, and spuds are scattered all over the floor. Hanging by one nail at the far end of the garage is a sign. The two police officers and the neighbor who called them turn their heads sideways and read it aloud in unison. Biotrans. Change your life, or someone else's, with Biotrans. The rookie cop turns to his partner and asks, "Say, Hal, what do you make of this?" "This," his partner responds, left hand on his belt, right hand resting on the butt of his service revolver, "is a classic case of leaving a mess behind. I believe our Mr. McGorkle suffered from a common problem in our society. Great learning has driven him to madness." "Who do you think he was mad at, Hal?" the rookie wants to know. Hal opens his jacket and removes a cinnamon twist from an inside pocket. He points it at Warble's neighbor. Him, no doubt. After all, he's the one who rat-finked on him when he was exercising his constitutional right to break his own toys in his own garage. The officers then arrest the neighbor for provoking a pillar of business and science beyond the breaking point, as well as the related charge of failing to mind his own business. Meanwhile, back on the highway, Warble has sworn off Spuds for life as he and Mary hurtle down the asphalt ribbon at 94.2 miles per hour. Chapter 60. Mary falls asleep at the Montana border, 50 miles east of Coeur d'Alene. All through Montana, she dreams of begonias, big, beautiful, bursting with color and fragrance. When the dream focuses on the begonias she left behind in Idaho, she whimpers like a dog when he has a nightmare about his master forgetting to take him along in the pickup when he goes into town or out hunting. When Mary dreams of her begonias at home in Oconomowoc, her facial expression vacillates between concern, "Are they still alive and thriving?" and joy, "I can't wait to see my babies again." Warble lets Mary sleep as his next idea ever so gradually begins to grow in his brain, perhaps somewhat like a virus, spreading through his organism, infecting all his limbs and joints and synapses. As they cross into North Dakota, Mary awakens, as if on cue. As Warble notices his wife open her eyes and look around, he says, "Mary, you lazy bones, you slept through the entire state of Montana." Mary rubs her eyes. "Did I miss anything?" Warble sees his chance to pull Mary's leg. He does. "Hey, let go my leg!" Mary objects. She hasn't been awake long enough to tolerate such tomfoolery very well. Warble revisits Mary's question. "Did you miss anything? We just drove through, or I just drove through, I should say, the fourth largest state in the Union, and you wonder if you missed anything." "Well, did I?" Mary responds testily. "I'll say you did," Warble shoots back. "I was involved in a gunfight with Marshal Dillon near Butte, took part in the reenactment of Custer's last stand. I played the role of Custer's horse, Bitbucket, and feasted on Rocky Mountain oysters at a roadhouse on the outskirts of Missoula." "Is that all?" Mary replies, feigning disinterest and pretending to go back to sleep. "Hey, wake up! No more sleeping on the job." "Job?" "Yes, I need you to provide feedback on my newest idea as it germinates," Warble explains. "That's a good way to put it," Mary says. "Of course, I've got a way with words. It's the Irish gift of gab. My great-great-grandpappy, Paddy Pubman, Pappy Van Winkle McGorkle, kissed the Blarney Stone. I've got his lips," my grandma said. "That being the case, I obviously inherited therefrom the gab skills." "Wonderful," Mary mutters. "Isn't it now, me lass?" Warble responds brightly. "Here's an example for you. See that sign up there?" "The Burma Shave one?" "No, not that one. The mileage sign. It says 314 miles to Fargo. Do you know how Fargo got its name?" "I haven't the slightest," Mary says. She tells Warble that she isn't really all that curious about it anyway, and would prefer to go back to sleep, but he forges onward, nevertheless, undeterred. "Remember the Pony Express? How it originally went from Wells, Nevada, to Fargo, North Dakota? Fargo was the eastern terminus of the western frontier at that time, as far as the Pony Express was concerned anyway. So when the driver got there, he would always tell the passengers, 'This is as far as we go. You see? Fargo. Fargo.' That was as far as they would go." "I get the picture, Warble," Mary says, wishing he would shut up. "All right, that's enough history for now," Warble says. "There might be a test tomorrow." "I'm sure there will be," Mary responds. "There are tests every day." The McGorkles drive on for a few miles in silence. While Mary enjoys the peace of Warble being quiet, he communes with himself, firming up in his mind the details of his latest and greatest idea. His next inspiration is bound to outdo the previous one, as clever as that last one indeed was. Even more money from even less work is his goal. Chapter 61. Warble locates a Motel 94.2 alongside the highway near Fargo. "This is as far as we go, Mary. For tonight anyway. I mean, who would want to stop, period? Stop, I mean, in this God-forsaken place." Mary, ignoring Warble as usual, gets out of the car. She is ready to eat, take a nice, long, hot bath, and follow that up with some scintillating television, such as The Weakest Link, a program Warble mistakenly thinks is a documentary about quality control workers in a sausage factory. When the next day dawns, Warble rouses Mary out of bed so that they can make it home by nightfall. He wants to be in Minnesota by breakfast time and across the Mississippi River and the Wisconsin border by late afternoon. Mary, spurred on by the thought of being home that night, is up and at him without any further prodding from Warble. Saving time where possible, the McGorkles go through the drive-thru to pick up cinnamon rolls, coffee, and French fries at a Citizen Page just across the Minnesota line. The closer the McGorkles get to the Wisconsin border, the more Mary perks up. She is actually awake, alert, and responsive now. Warble takes advantage of this state of affairs by initiating another history lesson. "Mary, we are bypassing Winona, Minnesota now. Over yonder, just beyond that hill and in a dale, lies the town. It is named for Winona Ryder, CC's great-granddaughter. Winona, you know, was the driving force behind the Judds, a hip-hop group she started here with her twin sisters Loshona and Drowona." Mary doesn't respond verbally. She just turns to Warble and shakes her head slowly in the affirmative, relaying to him that she heard what he said. Message received, if not necessarily decoded. Warble hopes, of course, that she catalogs the information for future reference. Mary, though, doesn't care much for hip-hop and forgets the trivia tidbit practically as soon as she hears it. With a whoop and a holler, the McGorkles cross the bridge over the Mississippi River into La Crosse, Wisconsin, where, according to Warble, the French sport of lacrosse was invented. Jacques-Pierre Marquette, he edifies Mary, leading a band of Jesuits on a field trip, stumbled across the Heilemann brewery. Asking for free samples, the thirsty initiates were turned down by the skinflint brewmaster. Marquette came up with a challenge. We will have a sword fight. Being peaceable people, though, we have no swords. We will duel instead, then, with our crosses. If we win, you serve us all the free beer we can drink. If we lose, we will boycott your product. No Roman Catholic in the state will buy it in that case, no pun intended, and you'll be ruined. You see, then, that I've outfoxed you and have you over a barrel. Several barrels, actually. Outraged at this challenge and threat to his livelihood, the brewmaster quickly fashioned some makeshift crosses for all his employees. The result of the battle is unfortunately lost to antiquity. The important part of it all was, though, that the manly sport of lacrosse was thereby invented. Captivating, Mary says sarcastically. To her credit, she doesn't believe a word of it. After dinner in lacrosse, where the pizza parlor, much to Warble's chagrin, does not have a single mural depicting the historic Jesuit brewery workers' battle Warble had described, the McGorkles get back on the road, heading southeast on the last leg of their journey home. Warble is still struggling with the particulars of his latest idea. Normally his brainstorms come to him full-blown and all decked out, with ribbons and all the doodads. But this time, Warble seems to be suffering a type of mental block. Thinking a snack might jumpstart the idea-finishing portion of his brain, Warble stops at the Super America in Portage and buys half a dozen cartons of Twinkies. Chapter 62. No wonder they say nobody can eat just one, Warble says a few minutes later, reaching for his 17th Twinkie. These puppies are habit-forming. I think it's the creamy filling. Then again, it could be the sponge cake covering thingy. Mary looks at him and rolls her eyes. Warble has been eating the snack cakes whole without removing the wrapper, and apparently is none the wiser. Mary doesn't inform him of his faux pas, thinking the dietary supplement might actually be good for him. The plastic and cardboard might rectify the chemical imbalance from which Mary increasingly suspects her husband is suffering. After his 29th Twinkie, Warble suddenly blurts out, "I've got it, Mary. The greatest scam of all. I mean, the best opportunity of all to be of service to the people. I'll go into politics. Yes, that's the ticket. I'll run for governor of Wisconsin. And I've got a surefire platform." Platform? You mean the one you'll be standing on when you get bombarded with eggs and tomatoes? Oh, I see what you mean. It's a surefire platform. It's sure to be set on fire. Stop kidding around, Mary. Here's my campaign pledge and promise to the residents of the great state of Wisconsin. No employer may require any employee to work during a Green Bay Packers game. And any employer who requests an employee to work during such must pay that employee, if said employee is willing to work, that is, quadruple time. The employer must pay them 4 times their normal rate of pay. That would be quite generous on their part, Mary says, not knowing how else to respond. Not only that, Warble continues, to pave the way for this type of legislation, the first step will be to proclaim the day on which every Packers game takes place a high holy holiday. It will be illegal to require anyone to work on a high holy holiday. No repercussions can come to any who refuse to work on such. In fact, such refusal will be officially encouraged by the state. And we will set up a watchdog agency to look into any allegations of employee intimidation or reprisal related to an employee's denial of work during an HHH. I guess we'll cut to the chase and just call it a triple H. Why not call it H cubed? Mary interjects. Mary, we're talking about those wonderful, beautiful, unwashed masses here. They may not know what cubed means. They'll get confused and think we're talking about diced ham or something, and some people don't like diced ham. And so if they don't know what cubed means, they won't understand my platform. If they don't understand my platform, I won't get elected. If I don't get elected, you won't be able to live in the lap of luxury in the governor's mansion. I won't, will I? Mary asks. What about you, Warble? Wouldn't you miss out on all of that too? Oh, well, I don't really care about that, Mary. I'm in it to serve the people, not for any temporal and crass material rewards that may happen to, rightfully though they may be, come my way. I'll be out in the trenches duking it out with the dastardly denizens of Packers apathy fighting for my constituents. No shrimp and caviar for me. I'll be munching on sauerkraut and brats, guzzling down brewskis with my greasy, grimy compadres. You're normal, average, everyday, Joe Lunchbucket type of guys. Anyway, how's this for a slogan? Force an employee to work on a Triple H, go to jail. You're a shoe-in, Warble, honey, Mary responds, rolling her eyes again. She's afraid she's actually right, though. She feels sorry for the competition, because nobody has a chance in Dallas against that platform in Wisconsin. Chapter 63. The McGorkles arrive home in Oconomowoc at 9:42 p.m. Mary grabs a flashlight and goes outside to check on her begonias. Warble begins to work the phones. He's got a lot of alliances to forge, coalitions to coalesce, and paperwork to perform. He wishes the bullfrog were still with him. That ingrate, he yells. Just because I deferred his salary and haven't paid him yet, he wasn't even loyal enough to stick with me through thick, thin, paper thin, and shark skin thin. You just can't get good help nowadays. By midnight, Warble has acquired a very powerful ally in the state Senate. Whortleberry Dane, the head of the DCCBBFFFSC, Department of Cheese Curds, Beer, Brats, Sauerkraut, Fish Fries, and Frozen Custard, Wisconsin's widest-ranging and most powerful political entity. Dane has had a falling out with the current governor and is willing to use his connections to help Warble unseat the incumbent by any means necessary. To make a long story short, Warble wins his party's nomination with the greatest of ease. Making the race completely unfair for all comers, Warble even goes beyond his original fail-safe campaign pledge. Besides securing the right of each resident to see all the Packers games he or she wants to without being harassed by heartless employers, Warble stacks the deck by also promising to clean up the whole state of the ubiquitous goose dung by which it is plagued. Warble's solution: anesthetization of all geese, followed by fitting them with diapers. This will not only make Wisconsin more pleasant for walking barefoot in the parks, it will also make it easier on the nose and provide employment for thousands. Warble's campaign slogan is, "You have a right to say no to working on a Triple H and a more pleasant Wisconsin via a diaper on every goose." Warble's rallying cry could stand to be catchier, but once his constituents understand the issues, Warble's opponent is only there to make it interesting. Although supremely confident of his ultimate victory and vindication, Warble doesn't want to rest on his laurels or let sleeping dogs lie. He'll be the one to do the lying. Thank you very much. So following Whortleberry's advice and his own instincts, Warble goes on the offensive. In accordance with the race for governor being referred to as a gubernatorial race, Warble challenges the incumbent to a goober eating contest. He explains to Mary, who is confused by the need for such an engagement, that the word gubernatorial is a combination of goober and notorial. A goober is a peanut, and notorial means something that goes on the inside, as opposed to equatorial, which refers to something on the outside, or the surface, such as the equator, which is on the surface, not under the surface, of the earth. Thus, Warble concludes patiently and, he thinks logically, gubernatorial refers to the old political tradition of a peanut eating contest. The winner of this manly sporting event secures for himself the governor's post, and the loser must sweep up the shells. Somehow I can relate to, and thus empathize with the loser, Mary says. Warble is not overly or overtly sympathetic. That's because you need to brush up on your etymological skills. He bluntly reprimands his wife. If you were able to deduce the meaning of words by breaking them up into their component parts, like I can do so skillfully, you could use this knowledge to get a leg up on your competition. Everyone else on earth, that is. The day of the gubernatorial contest finally arrives, with Whortleberry Dane at his side playing the part of the disinterested and impartial observer who also happens to be slated to serve as the referee of the conflict. Warble is sitting imperiously on stage as the incumbent arrives. In a hurry, as the seminar on cheese curds and cream puffs he had just attended had run a little overtime. Warble and the incumbent shake hands. Warble is surprised at how short the current governor is. He looks taller on television. The incumbent is surprised at how tall Warble is. He had, on reading his speeches and campaign promises, pictured him as a quite small man. Warble suddenly sits down on his stool next to his barrel of peanuts. At this prearranged sign, Whortleberry declares the start of the contest by vigorously clanging a cowbell. The incumbent, taken by surprise, scurries over to his stool and quite rapidly, for a man of his advanced age, begins shelling and eating peanuts. To again make a long story a little less lengthy, we'll cut to the end of the contest here. Although the currently installed governor acquits himself well, Warble wins by a landslide, literally. The incumbent shells his peanuts so quickly that he cannot see what is happening on the other side of the platform, where Warble, with a little help from his friend Whortleberry, is scarfing down peanuts which have already been shelled by a bevy of underfed, self-inflicted, and underpaid, Warble-inflicted interns. Additionally, the pre-shelled peanuts Warble eats have been genetically altered to shrink in his stomach. The incumbent gives it his all, but in the end his pile of shells collapses on him, and he is buried under the avalanche. Seeing that his plan has succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, Warble declares himself the victor of the gubernatorial contest, and, after ordering the staff at the governor's mansion to throw all of the incumbent's personal effects onto the lawn, calls the maintenance crew to remove the buried alive under a pile of peanut shells politician from the premises. Barely breathing, the broken man, in spirit that is, after receiving a thorough checkup, it is determined that the only thing that is really hurt is his pride, retires from politics and returns to the private sector, becoming a Wisconsin Ducks tour guide. As it turns out, though, even the governorship of the dairy state is not enough to satisfy Warble. Chapter 64. Mary, Warble announces one morning at the breakfast table of the governor's mansion in Madison, "I've done all I can for this state. I've solved every problem. Every Packers game is watched by all who want to see it, and although I have instructed the CHU, Cheesehead Underground, to monitor all those who don't watch the games, I have exercised superhuman restraint and have not had any of them arrested, let alone deported, tortured, or executed. Besides that, as if that weren't enough, every goose in the state has been diapered. And thanks to me, realizing as they do that virtually the whole state is watching them, the Packers have ratcheted their play up to another level. Wisconsinites have to be very creative now to find anything to complain about. The other day I was listening to two of our police officers up in Rhinelander." "When were you in Rhinelander?" Mary interjects. She doesn't remember him having ever gone up there. "Who said I was in Rhinelander?" Warble replies, irritated at the interruption. "I said I was listening to two of our police officers up there." "You can hear from here to Rhinelander?" Mary asks, confused. "Mary, don't be so naive. All the police cruisers are bugged naturally. We need to know what our representatives out there on the highways and byways are thinking and talking about. Anyway, as I was saying before, I was so rudely and ignorantly interrupted. Things are going so well here in America's Dairyland that people have to come up with stuff like this to complain about." One of the officers said to the other, "Did you watch the Packers game last night?" The other officer says, "No, I had to work." The first officer replies, "It was a disgrace. You should have seen it. Love only had 7 touchdown passes. He could have had 8, but he missed Matthew Golden wide open in the corner of the end zone once. See what I mean, Mary?" "Yes, I guess so, Warble. But what is all this leading up to?" "The next stage in my development, the next step in my career. I can turn over the reins of state government to Whortleberry. He can take it from here. I've got bigger fish to fry." "And what fish would those be?" Mary asked skeptically. Her begonias are just beginning to recover from the neglect they suffered during the McGorkles' extended absence from their home. "All the fish in the country, not just the fish here in Wisconsin," Warble answers cryptically. Mary raises an eyebrow questioningly, and Warble goes on. "I'm going to run for president of these here United States, Mary." Warble lets his declaration sink in. Mary's face is expressionless, although she seems to have suddenly developed a twitch at the bottom right corner of her mouth. Warble can't tell if she's nervous, shocked, or simply too happy for words. He doesn't know if he should risk telling her the last bit of good and exciting news. She might just suffer a paroxysm of happiness and cause a scene right inside the governor's mansion, a place Warble wants to keep dignified and businesslike, but he just can't keep it in. He's got to let it out. Although Warble knows he's flirting with disaster, he blurts out, "And you, Mary, are to be the first female vice president of the United States. Yes, you, dear one, are to be my running mate." Chapter 65. It is with a resigned sadness that Mary closes up their house in Oconomowoc. She would rather tend her flowers than be vice president or even president of the United States. She must, though, accompany her husband. Warble needs her. Money is no object for Warble's presidential campaign. Realizing what a term as president can do for his future, all the connections he can make, deals he can swing, favors he can grant, and more importantly, have reciprocated later, Warble pulls out all the stops.